Good evening. Get my earphones out, correct? Hey, good evening. I am Glynda Carr, one of the co-founders of Higher Heights and the president of Higher Heights for America. Thank you for joining us for the fourth installment of the hashtag Black Women Lead Political Leadership Webinar Series Author Talkback editions. For those who have been following us, Higher Heights this summer released a Chisholm 50 summer reading list, and we've been celebrating the late Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm all year. This is her 50th anniversary of being sworn into Congress as the first Black woman to ever serve in that body. So to honor her unbought and unbossed leadership, we've been releasing Chisholm 50 lists. The first list was a list of 50 Black elected women that you should be aware of, who are doing amazing things. And then our second list was our summer reading list, a list of an amazing list of badass Black women authors who are writing across genre, academics, activists, some just fiction books. And we were able to confirm 7 of the authors for a talkback. The first one was Stacey Abrams, where she talked about her book, Leading from the Outside. Last night we had the Color Girls, Donna Brazile, Mignon Moore, Leah Daughtry, and Yolanda Caraway. And then we actually had an author whose book hasn't even come out yet, Karine Jean-Pierre, the senior spokesperson at Move On, but more importantly, you may see her just like you see Professor Cooper on MSNBC. And so tonight, we're so excited about our author. But let me tell you a little bit about Higher Heights. Higher Heights is the national organization building the political power of Black women from the voting booth to elected office. We are the home for Black women's political leadership, the one-stop shop for all things about Black women in this democracy, thinking about running for office, want to be more engaged as a citizen in our democracy. I think we would all agree that our participation in our democracy is more important than ever. And so if you want to be part of an amazing network of Black women and our allies to truly unleash the organizing power of Black women from the voting booth to elected office, Higher Heights is your home. Today you can see I don't have the best lighting. I am not in my home with my red walls. I am actually traveling. I am in D.C. and am in a hotel room. So we're going to pray that the technology works for the next hour. But for those who are new to this webinar series, it is a power-pack, 1 hour only conversation. And so just some housekeeping. If you are listening on the phone, you can participate in the dialogue. If you have questions for Brittney Cooper, you can text 646. I never know this number by heart, 646-206-5931, 646-206-5931. So any time during the webinar, you can text us a question. If you are actually following us online and watching the webinar, if you look at your screen, you'll see an attendee chat. If you click on that, you can actually send us messages and send us questions. Just realize that if you do that, everybody on here will see it. So just keep that in mind. So let's start with, where's everybody logging in from or calling in? So again, if you are on the phone, text me at 646-206-5931. Like I said, I'm in Washington, D.C. If you're on the webinar, put where you're logging in from. We'd love to know where everybody is engaging. Someone said they're from the Bronx, Stacy. Bronx, New York. Brooklyn, New York. It's also, Black women are the largest users of social media. And so invite others to be part of this conversation and to know about, Tuskegee, Alabama, yes, the conversation. So you can post to social media using the hashtag Black Women Lead, tag Higher Heights at Higher Heights on Twitter. If you're a Instagram or a Facebook person, our handle is at Higher Heights and the number 4. someone is from Kansas, Wichita. So I think we across the country. That is great. And the community still building. There is still time for people to log on. So if you want to email them, let them know. If they register, they'll get the login information, or you can just send the login information that you have. Shh, don't tell the team I said that, but that's the quick way. So let me introduce the conversation that we're having today with the brilliant Professor Brittney Cooper. And if you notice, you're like, if you've got the book and you're like, what cover is this? What cover? This is not the cover I know. I went because I'm traveling, so I didn't have my book with me. And most of y'all know who've been listening, tuning in, I actually listen to books on Audible. And so I always buy, I get my Audible subscription and I buy the hardcover book because I love a hardcover book. But I went to grab the book and then I see this new beautiful cover. And she just shared that her paperback just came out. So this is the new cover of the paperback of Eloquent Rage. So many of y'all know Brittney Cooper. She is Dr. Brittney Cooper. She's a writer, teacher, public speaker. She thinks Black feminists can change the world for the better. She's an associate professor of women's and gender studies and Africana studies at Rutgers University. She's the co-founder of the popular Crunk Feminist collective blog. You can see her, tearing things up and burning things up and building them all at the same time with her intellect on MSNBC, The Roots, the New York Times, the Washington Post. She's everywhere. And this is so exciting. This is her book that came out in 2018, if I believe. And I'm so excited to have a conversation this evening about her leadership, her journey, and in particular this book. So thank you, Brittney Cooper, for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So for those who haven't had a chance to lean in on the book, I was sharing with her that I've been surprised at, sometimes I pick up books just because they're on my list and then I get to them. And so for me, I was like, it's Brittney Cooper. It's going to be a great, academic, it's an academic book. She's going to give all this great analysis, which she does not disappoint. She does. But this book literally is a memoir. I mean, when she shares her whole soul and her whole being, because she believes that her journey, and I'm talking for you, because now, you're my best friend in my head. Because many of your experiences are the experiences that I have. I'm a northern raised Black girl who, grew up in a community and in a school system where I was, one of three girls of color. So many of your experiences, when you read this book, you nod your head. So one, thank you so much for oftentimes we shield who we are to others. We don't share our full selves. We don't share our full stories. I always talk about we come from a tradition. I call it my mother's propaganda. So we create great personas to the folk, and then being able to open the door to really know about folks' background helps to, I think, inform how your upbringing and your experiences have shaped your analysis on the issue, and the fact that you were, the really smart, well-read girl from day one. And so I wanted to start with a question around Eloquent Rage, because I think it was as brilliantly, I thought the title in itself was great, but then understanding the origin of it, I think, is important in this moment when oftentimes, Black women are labeled as angry, that we're raging, and that you are leaning in on the importance of embracing our rage, but embracing it in a way that is purposeful.
Yeah. So thank you for this, and thank you for the work of Higher Heights. We're relying on Black women to pull this thing out, and so thank you so much for that committed work of organizing. We really need it. Eloquent Rage is a thing that one of my students said to me many years ago. She saw me some months after our class had ended, and she said, "I used to love to listen to you lecture because your lectures were filled with rage, but it was like the most eloquent rage ever." And I immediately got defensive and said, "I'm not angry, I'm passionate." Because even though she was a Black girl, I was like, why are you perpetuating this angry Black woman stereotype? And she just affixed me with the Black girl look, and she was like, you know you're angry, Brittney. And when a Black girl calls you out, I mean, it's the most honest kind of call out. You know, we see each
Mm-hmm.
other in a real way. And it was one of the most freeing moments, I think, of my life. And I'm so thankful that it happened when it did. I was just at the beginning of my academic career. And one of the things that that encounter showed me was that I could show up as my full self. I could show up in my, even with the anger and the rage, sort of kind of perfuming the atmosphere, and still, deliver lectures with clarity and rigor, still do the work that I was there to do, still educate and empower students. But the rage gave them something authentic to connect to, because I think what it does is it infuses a particular kind of passion and urgency in our work, that we're not just doing this just because it's a job, or just because we need to make a paycheck, but because we are actually trying to change our trajectory. And so being seen by that Black girl, and not just being seen, but having the way that she saw me affirm a particular value for how I showed up, um, has just been so helpful. And it's the thing that I seek to do in this book, is ultimately to say to Black women, I see you, and the way that you show up is fine, as long as you give yourself permission to own it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Multitasking. Somebody's trying to get on the webinar. Absolutely agree that it is, okay for Black women to have the full emotions, in the way that, oftentimes this leads into like my hot button topic, that you don't necessarily talk on, but you over talk on, the whole allyship in white women in our space, is that the notion that we have to be the shrinking violets, that we should be the one to yield space. And I think it is important. There's a recent incident that happened. It actually happened in New York, in Brooklyn, where it's a video that went viral about this Black woman, defending the fact that this white woman had like stepped into her daughter's space. And the response was, "Oh, I didn't see her." And I think Black women, regardless of what part of the country we're from, doesn't matter, socioeconomic backgrounds, how we physically look, we, are oftentimes invisible to others, invisible to our white female counterparts, sometimes invisible among our own folk and our male counterparts. And so the notion that we should be taking up more space. I always, talk about, like, I feel like I'm a woman of a stature. I wear big green glasses, that you should see me. That, more than ever, our voices and our leadership and our space matters. And so what would you say to particularly young Black women, about the importance of having your presence heard and your voice heard?
Yeah. No, thank you for reminding me of that. We were chatting about this briefly before the webinar, and it reminded me of two things. One, I won like a feminist award last week, and so I was at an award ceremony with lots of feminists, and one of the white women there just couldn't say excuse me. Like, she was willing to bump into me, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. Y'all are doing this passive aggressive white femininity thing that's about claiming space and turf and territory. And I think the thing with white women is that sometimes they're not even honest about their desire for power and the way that they enact that on Black women. I noticed it again when I was in the airport this weekend, that white women will go out of their way to not have to say, excuse me. It doesn't mean, so they will not look you in the eye as they bump into you, when it's so clear that you're a big Black body right in the space. And so there's this level of dishonesty to it that infuriates me, frankly. And I think I did say to a white woman, in the airport, like, excuse me would have worked. You know what I mean? And she just looked at me like, how dare you? So I think that, and so what becomes interesting is, I think we're attuned to think of the white women who do that as, like, not necessarily people we would say see in feminist spaces or progressive spaces. And I think white women got to have a conversation about the way Part of what's going on is that they are feeling the squeeze of this white boy that they put in office and the way that he and his cronies are trying to push and suppress women out of the public sphere. And I almost think that they're turning up the dial on this, turf war, but they're not waging it with white men. They're waging it with the people that they have power over. And I think that that's a real problem. But I was also reminded that the earliest memory I have of this is being in high school and going to a store with my mother, and a white woman literally standing in the shoe aisle of a department store, and she had a stroller. And so she literally refused to say, she wanted to get past us. And she was willing to back up and go around us in order to not have to say, excuse me. And then she bumped into us again on another aisle and just sort of stared my mother down as though the goal was for that my mother would move. And my mother is not the person you want to do that to. If you read Eloquent Rage, like, she is the original queen of crunk. And so it was about to be a whole problem because the woman was physically prepared to try to like move us out of the way, which was such a terrible calculation. And the only thing that saved my mother from getting violent, particularly because I was with her, was that a minister, my mama is a preacher's wife, and a minister walked past at that moment and said, okay, sis, we don't even need to do this. You know what I mean? And he wasn't trying to defend the white woman. He was literally like, I see this power dynamic and I know that this is not going to go your way. You know? And so my sensibility is take up space, don't apologize. And frankly, I'm also of the mind that when white women do that shit, they should be called out. That we should say to them, like, y'all, for people who are so deeply invested in this notion of like white feminine propriety and manners and civility, that shit goes out the window when you encounter us, which says to me everything that you think about who Black women are, that you don't see us, that you actually don't think our womanhood is like yours until there is this call for feminist unity, and then you want us to lay all of that stuff to the side. And I think the conversation is hard to have with progressive white women because I don't think that white people, even the progressive ones of them, are attuned to the way that they move through space as people who own the space. The thing that I think white privilege makes most invisible to white people is when they get up in the morning and walk out of the door, they walk around as people who own and rule the world. And because I've thought a long time about that space thing and how sometimes, you could just feel it. You just walking around. It's the way that they just run out in traffic and assume ain't nobody gonna hit them, like all kind of stuff, And I'm like, oh, whiteness is a hell of a drug. And so, you know, so I say all of that to say I think Black women should trust their account and experience that is the thing that is going on. When I saw this piece recently about white women refusing to say excuse me, I really wrote like on my social media, oh, I thought it was just me. And so I think it's important for us to say, no, this is the thing that they do. And hold your ground. Don't move, because this isn't about manners. It's actually a turf war. And I think that everyone thinks that the role of Black women is to retreat. And I think people are deeply uncomfortable in a world where Black folks wouldn't just sort of move out of the way and allow the steamrolling to occur.
Yeah. And I think that's a great leeway into, because people that have followed you, particularly on social or just your commentary and your writing, there's obviously a whole discussion around Black women and identifying as feminists and or a womanist. And so you lean obviously slowly in your work, and particularly in this book, around, Black feminists. And you spend a lot of time explaining why you kind of came to this notion around, claiming the space as a Black feminist and why. I have it's two parts. That's part one of just your thoughts around Black women and identifying, as feminists. And then the second question, I'll let you be able to do it all in one, is the notion. No, I'm going to stop.
Okay.
Part two will come.
Yeah. Black women really struggle with this. And it's so interesting to me because I'm like, well, we don't struggle to, we call ourselves Democrats, right? we call ourselves Christians, right? Christians are terrible. White evangelical Christians are largely roundly terrible, but Black women don't have no problem claiming that moniker. So I just always wonder what it is about feminism that we have decided that white women get to determine the shape of our politics. It's why I don't buy the argument, because there are all kinds of other labels that we also have to co-inhabit with white people, that we don't say that because they are the thing and they are problematic that we don't get to do it or that we don't get to transform it. Um, and so, I'm a feminist because Black women have been feminist, and they've been feminist for more than 100 years. Um, and because they have always said that in order for a Black freedom project to occur, we can't just talk about the men. And the reality is that when you read a lot of our earliest male freedom fighters, they're talking about getting their manhood rights, and they're talking about achieving power with white men. And if they're talking about their families at all, they're talking about them in a very top down way. Like, I want to protect my woman. I want to, be able to make money so that I can be a traditional man. And none of that is about, well, what is Black women's freedom vision and what do they see? And so Black women have always come in and critiqued that, and critiqued the way that men, even our men, their vision of freedom is about the ability to be patriarchs. And we've said that's a really limited vision of freedom. Um, so one, white women didn't invent this. They just honestly didn't. They didn't invent it. White women came to the first wave of feminism in the 19th century because they were observing what Native women had, indigenous women had property rights, voting rights, tribal rights, and white women were like, oh shit, we don't have that. And they were also looking at the condition of Black women and saying, look at how they're being treated. We're also property. And so Black women abolitionists were already advocating for an end to slavery, and they became a model for white women about how to do it and how to advocate for themselves. And so why would we concede intellectual and political ground to them that they didn't see, they didn't till it, they didn't plant it, and the harvest therefore can't solely be theirs. So there's that. And I think of it as this is intellectual and political labor that our ancestors did, that a series of very fierce, dope, crunk Black women in the 1890s and early 1900s fought for us to have the right to have. They fought to be included in the suffrage movement, right? They fought to have a political analysis about this. And it wasn't like just only white women were doing them wrong. Black men were also, in many ways, fine with the notion that they would vote and Black women wouldn't. So the history says this has always been a part of our political traditions. And so at the point that I don't think that white women invented it, then I'm not therefore joining something that they created. I'm moving in a tradition that Black women have bequeathed to me. And I don't have a problem with sisters identifying with womanism. Alice Walker womanism is Black feminism. I mean, that's the first line of the definition. A womanist is a Black feminist.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with that. But I do think that sometimes what I see Black women doing when they claim womanism is they think that it's actually a less offensive term to Black men. And that's the part where I'm like, no thanks, right? Because if what we're doing is saying we're not going to be feminists because white women are feminists and they're racist, and we're going to be womanists because, we don't want to threaten Black men, then that means that we're still letting everybody else but us determine the shape of our politics. And I'm a Black feminist because it's the one place where we get to be at the center of the story. So it's like no shade, but I also think that the word feminism does a particular thing. It's disruptive. It is about a particular set of politics and political struggles. And so when the revolution comes, I don't care whether you call yourself a feminist, a womanist, a humanist, or whatever. Are you down for an end to this oppression, and do you want to get free? Like, those are my questions. But in this moment where we get an opportunity to clarify and be very precise about what we're fighting for, then I'm throwing my lot in with the Black feminists and with feminism more generally, because I think that it is the place to go if you want an analysis of patriarchy and gender that actually shows us how this thing is structured and how we fight back against it.
Yep. So that leads me to my second question, which I'm glad I held it back.
Yeah.
Is you talk about, and when I say I probably was getting my nails done, I was like, yes, Yes. That to be a feminist, a true feminist, you have to love and be in love with women and Black women.
Yeah.
And that it is, it is a labor of love. um,
Yeah.
and that it comes with its, its hardship comes with its, what I call its blessings. Like I was sharing with you when we booked this date, today is would have been my mother's 82nd birthday. And so I was like, y'all are allowing me to spend today, with my mother. And I come from a tradition where, my great grandmother died when I was 25 years old, right? So she was shy of my 100th birthday. So I had a great grandmother, grandmother, and mother. So these, here are three women born from 1895 to my mother was born in 1937. Feminists, womanists, they don't know none of these labels, but they lived that life.
Yeah.
And I said my mother would love you, had endless love, endless kisses, and was the woman that would cuss you out, right?
That's right.
like half the memories you remember, people are like, I love your mother was so sweet. My mother was sweet. But she taught the true meaning of just like how do you love up on and work for Black women. Share a little bit about your thinking around that.
Yeah, no, I love that. So salute. I know that, it's difficult, but I'm so happy to be sharing this day with you. And I too knew my great grandmother and my grandmother and my mama. And that's also why whenever I show out with people, I'm like, I'm in a tradition. The worst day for anybody is the day that I start talking about whose great granddaughter I am and whose granddaughter I am and whose daughter I am. Because that means that I'm about to really show out. And I'm conjuring the strength, all of that ancestral power and my mama's current continued crunkness to just be like, you're on bullshit. And I never apologize for that, right? Because, because I was raised to see Black women as superheroes because I watched them, in a system not designed for them to win, get up every day and conjure a different set of possibilities. And I just remain in awe of that. And I think, um, you know, so one, I naturally gravitate towards loving women because women are the people who feel most safe to me. So there is that. But I think that we have complicated histories with each other. And certainly sometimes our complicated histories and our trauma show up and don't allow us to be loving. And so my commitment and ethic around this is I love Black women. I want to see us win. And that means that even when I don't like you, then my Black feminist politics demands that I stand with you, that I fight for you. And so that might mean that, like, if you're going through a battle in the institution, we both work there, or in a political struggle, then I'm going to stand with you. Now, I might not want to talk to you on the phone afterward. I might not want to go to the bar and have no drinks with you. But right is right. And if you are being victimized by white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism, then I think I have a responsibility to stand with you. And I think that that's a clarity that Black feminism provides. But I also wanted us to get back to that real kind of core thing, because a lot of times we're talking about patriarchy, we're talking about intersectionality. And I'm like, well, how do you feel about women? Do you love women? Do you think women are dope? Because I was tired of hearing these stories about folks who claim to be feminists. And then when I looked around and heard about their interpersonal relationships with Black women, they were just raggedy, backbiting, gossipy, unloving, just not treating people well. And I'm like, you ain't no feminist if your primary relationships with Black women are contentious, if you are a person who says, I just relate better to men than women, women are so difficult, and all of that kind of stuff. Like, what are you talking about? Because dudes don't really actually, individual dudes might, but collectively dudes don't have our best interest at heart. And I just am, anytime a woman tells me that she doesn't really deal with other women, then I think that that's a woman that I can't trust. And I would still fight for her. But I think, like, you don't have good homegirl energy. And I don't understand how we're getting free without homegirl energy. So I always am looking to see, like, when I meet a woman, out in the streets, I'm like, who your crew, who your people? Who do you call when you need to talk through things? Who are you accountable to? Who can check you on your raggediness? Do you have people in your life who think you're dope, but who are largely unimpressed with you, right? Because they get to see you up close. So they will ride for you, right? And they are impressed by you, right, out in the world, but they not impressed with you. They understand how the sausage gets made. They know your draw size, and like they will, pull you up if you get, if you don't have your stuff together. And I really do have homegirls like that, who see the messiness and the difficulty of this work. Um, and so I just believe in that homegirl ethic. And here's the other thing I want to say. That doesn't mean that I haven't been hurt by other Black women. I absolutely have. I write a bit about it in Eloquent Rage, that it was a long struggle to find my crew, that I had both this deep abiding sense as a kid. I had a Black woman teacher who saw me with my white bestie in elementary school, and she was like, "Where are your Black friends at?" Because Black women of a certain age will ask you these questions, right? And it was like a bit of an existential crisis for me, but it allowed me not to go into the space of whiteness, right? But to always be realizing that I needed to build my homegirl crew, and that's an instruction that I took seriously, and then I set about trying to do that, but I didn't do it without a lot of like hurt and pitfalls and friendships that didn't work. And I think the challenge is that when the friendships don't work, then we give up on all Black women. And we say in the aggregate, you can't trust sisters. And when we say that, well, then aren't we trafficking in a narrative that white people propagate? Aren't we trafficking in a narrative that brothers propagate about how sisters are not trustworthy? Have the media propagates that, they like it when Black women are battling and fighting and all of that. And I just think that the way that we live out this politics is to say, no, we love each other. We got each other. We ride for each other. Um, and I invite sisters who have been hurt in friendships to keep on trying, because there are so many other things that do us wrong. We will put up with partners who do us raggedy, and we will keep on trying. We put up with jobs that do us raggedy. We keep on trying. We put up with a nation and a set of politics that just wants to frankly kill us, and we keep on trying. And the one group that we keep trying with the church, right? And our religious institutions. And sometimes the one group that we won't keep on trying with is Black women, and we're the group that deserves the extra try and the benefit of the doubt more than.
Yeah, and I think in particular, recognizing not only the tradition we come from, but the hurt we come from. It's a little bit of what I talked the Color Girls. I mean, what's great about their book is obviously they're 5 professional women who didn't, their paths crossed. And what Leah Daughtry said before, and they could have just been professional colleagues, is that she chose to take a risk, right?
Yeah.
And they have a 30-year friendship, and they were like, we had some very public times when we knew that we were not getting along, but at the basis of, I disagree, I'm still going to fight in these streets for you. And they talk about that, Yolanda Caraway talks about, like, she was the convener, so she loves to have dinner parties. And she said, one thing about our Tuesday night dinners is that our friendship is that it's loving, your heart can be broken, but then it can be fixed. And I think that is what we need to do with Black women. But I also think that part of our superpower, let's see, I'm going back to the superpower, is the ability for us actually to bring others into the fold, and particularly in the framework of feminists. So you talk a little bit about, because she uses music as the basis of many of your analogies around Beyonce and Lemonade, and the notion that she was able to use her platform and her that particular album in a way to show and flex her feminist, right? Her first kind of like very broad-based piece, and again, of course, you've got the beehive that comes and protects her, but frankly, there's a beehive that came and attacked her ability to kind of to use her voice in that way. And you talk in the book in particular that being able to use music and to use influencers like a Beyonce to bring, Black women like my cousin from around the way to my best friend who lives in Atlanta, stay-at-home mom, into the fold is the way that we actually bring more people into the movement. So share a little bit about how do we use our superpower of the fact that we can connect and build tables in a way that is bringing people in and not excluding and frankly shaming.
Yeah. I mean, I try to write from the perspective of being a feminist raised on hip hop. And so living in a fundamental contradiction because so much of hip hop is like, misogynist. And I mean, the lyrics aren't always the best, but the beats are hot though. That's the thing that'll get you caught up every time, right? And wanting and sort of wanting to be able to own, these traditions of contradiction. And um, so that there's part of that. And I mean, look, Beyonce and I think I'm 9 months older than her, whatever. So we came of age, in the same historical moment. And I just was deeply bothered by the way that Black women showed their asses, frankly, in 2013 when she came out with Beyond the album Beyonce. And then everyone sort of brought her back into the fold with Lemonade. But there was like this 3-year battle about, does she get to claim feminism? Does she, is she she's a capitalist? And I was like, nobody was going around being like, we can't talk about Michael Jackson and enjoy him because he's a capitalist, or he doesn't get to be political because he's making a lot of money. But we said that about Beyonce, and it just felt like unfair, mean girl stuff that was about our trauma. And it's like, you don't have to like her as an artist. I mean, if you don't like her as an entertainer, like, I'll give you the side eye because she's clearly the best of this generation for sure. But I was like, oh, she's a trigger. That's interesting, right? Because light skinned girls, I personally don't have a trigger point around light skinned girls. A lot of Black women do, and it just seemed to show up. And I was like, oh, what is this? Because I said, look, we're out here like trying to be feminist and trying to be progressive. And so are we saying we don't want girls who didn't go to college to be able to claim a radical politic? And everyone was like, oh, it's a gimmick. And I said, nah, like, because when did becoming a feminist ever make one popular and super cool? Like, I don't know that. I mean, where's that world? Please let me know about it. But what I did think was this language, this claiming this is interesting. And I always had the sense that it was giving her language to think about what it meant to be a woman growing in power with a man who was much older and sort of somewhat more traditional. And Lemonade then confirmed that he was being real raggedy to her and terrible and whatever. And that feminism gave her language to try to think about the relationship she was in, plus, her business. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we're fighting for? So, so music is all throughout the book because I want people to be able to own whatever soundtracks matter to them. And frankly, Beyonce, a lot of my most, sort of significant feminist theorizing has come after listening to a Beyonce song. That's just true. And that doesn't have to be true for other folks. It's true for me. But also, I also thought about music a bit because I was thinking about like battles in intimate relationships with Black men and Black women, so particularly heterosexual relationships, and thinking about how, when I'm growing up, my mama had me young, and so she's 57. And and so I grew up listening to, R&B from the 80s and 90s, New Edition, post New Edition, right? Johnny Gill, Luther, and Alex O'Neal, Anita Baker, Tony Braxton, Babyface, right? Like that's the music that played in our house, and that my mama, when her girls were together, that they would listen to. So all that to say, I grew up on love songs, and then like my generation. I'm 38. It's like we had, when we were little and coming of age, we had love songs, Jodeci and Boys to Men, and all of the boy groups of the 90s and so forth and so on. And then you got to the early 2000s where you really trying to figure out your life, and all of it was just smack a hoe, fuck a bitch, like these hoes can't be trusted. And while I like to go to the club and dance to that kind of music, terrible as it is, I have had to ask myself, like, are we living in the aftermath of both a sort of structural violence on our communities brought along by Bill Clinton in particular, around like just moving massive amounts of men out of communities, but also is there an emotional and intimate consequence of not having any vulnerability in the music, right? Because music is the thing that is the place where we learn how to have a deep emotional life. It's like our popular connection where you can feel all your feelings while you're listening to the mixtape. And boys used to listen to that and know that it was okay to have emotions about a woman or girl, and and to express those things to her in one form or another. And today, a lot of our cultural production is about invulnerability and about men sort of not willing to own that they have particular feelings for women. And and so the cultural critic in me, that's just like a question that I have. It's a question that concerns me is what are the models that we have for how to love each other? How do we, because until we figure out that, like, when I come home, and that's true whatever romantic partner you're coming home to, right? But when you come home and how you are being loved by your family and by your partner, and in your intimate life, that's the stuff that fortifies us for the fight. And if that
Mm-hmm.
stuff has also been totally wrecked by all of these sort of structural challenges, then I worry about, our health as, black communities of black people. And so it's like an underlying thread in the book that I'm trying to work through. And so I get at that thread by thinking about the music and like how now, like I do when I teach, I ask kids, what are your love songs? And you know what they tell me? And
Mm.
they consistently told me for 10 years, they say, oh, we listen to our parents' music. And then they start naming stuff from the 90s. And I'm like, how dare you? Because we're not that old. But also, they're like, we go back. They're like, we don't actually, or they can name me 2 or 3 people, but they can't rattle off a list of artists with love songs. And so they feel the dearth. And I'm hoping that the art kind of in this moment where we're seeing a burgeoning again of Black creativity, I'm hoping that that is the thing we see the return of. It's like some real deal, I'm begging you, and it ain't pretty, and I'm ugly crying kind of love songs where men can do that. Because when men can tap into an emotional register in the culture, then that's the place we want to be. We don't want to be in a place where they are being totally invulnerable in every facet of their lives. Like, that's not healthy. So.
So we're taking questions. Actually, this next question fits perfectly as a follow-up, but we've got about 15 minutes. So if you have a question and you're logged on to the webinar, go into the attendee chat and put it in. If you are listening, you can text 646-206-5931. So the question, well, there's some loving up on you and then a question. Love me some Eloquent Rage. I love to lift this work and reference in workshops I create and facilitate regarding health, equity, and wellness. Can you chat a bit about how important the vibes in Eloquent Rage are to Black women's minds, bodies, and spirits? And what testimonies have you heard? Many of my patients have resonated with your truth in this work.
Thank you for that. Black women just do that thing where they, find me at book talks and they say, this book saved my life. Really, it changed my life. Um, and that's a pretty, humbling moment because for me, it makes me think about the ways that people don't care enough about our souls and our well-being. And, look, there were commercial pressures when I was doing this book to make it more commercially viable by not being so Black girl focused, right? And I was like, no, 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 no. I'm writing a book for us, for the moments when we have been made to feel crazy about a world that induces our anger, or about the way that people don't love us like we deserve to be loved, or the way that we can't show up and love each other in the ways that we want because of all of the stuff that besets us. And I wanted Black women to know that by and large, that stuff ain't our fault. Even if we have the responsibility to heal and to figure out how to be productive and healthy in the midst of it. And I didn't feel like there was enough work that really, let us off the hook for some conditions we didn't create. And so it absolutely, I don't know. It's funny to me because I see myself as so cerebral and not particularly touchy feely. So it's so funny to me when Black women are like, I want to give you a hug, or let me tell you what this book did for my soul. Because I don't know, I wanted to care about Black girls. This is just my love ethic in print on, this book. This is my love letter to Black women. All the things that I want, that I wish I had had in a book and that I had the opportunity to say. But, I didn't necessarily know that it would really hit in that way, like that Black women would really dig in and feel it. And it has just been good to know that the work feels healing for folks. Because I don't always, I respect healers, but I'm more comfortable with the title of scholar or like cultural critic or whatever. And, and attending to Black women's hearts was not a thing that I knew was like a part of the work I was supposed to be doing. And so, So, so it has knocked me off my square a bit to know that it has landed in that way. And I think but I also think we deserve that, right? We deserve to have work that speaks to our scars and our places that are tender and sensitive and that no one else ever seems to see. And that when we do see each other, if we don't have the benefit of those real good deep black girl friendships, typically we working. We like, well, the country's falling apart. We got all this work to do. So I don't have time to attend to that tenderness in the way I want. And this was an opportunity to do that. And I'm just so thankful for it. So
Another question. I feel like, our attendees know how to stack questions. So this is a text question.
okay.
So you said that you didn't think like kind of your space is a healer space, that you fall in a scholar space. And your subtitle is, a Black feminist who discovers her superpower. So what superpower did you discover?
Yeah.
And how
Yeah.
did you
No,
discover
I
it?
discovered that rage was, a superpower. Because the thing about superpowers is when you don't have a healthy relationship to them, that they can also be a deep weakness. I was really uncomfortable with my rage for a very long time because I had seen it largely used in destructive ways, which is a thing that I talk about in the book. I had seen, my father struggle with addiction and, was a violent abuser. And so I had just seen rage show up in a way that destroyed everything Black women built. And I had, grown up in a school system where I had to fight to achieve, fight to be recognized, fight to be respected. Um, and and then sort of got to the pinnacle of high school achievement and just had white kids who were mad about it and so I had just had all this anger just brimming over, probably even some anger toward my mother a bit that, because she was like a single black mama trying to make it. And that, one of the things my mom has said to me in the aftermath of reading this book, she did read it and she said, she said I could have been more tender, right? And one of the things we talked about is the way that the hustle to try to make it robs us sometimes of the ability to just like show up and be tender with our children. And I think that even though I didn't know that tenderness was a thing I needed, I had some anger for the places that I didn't get it. And so, in learning a new way to relate to all that rage and to stop running away from it, because it was showing up in my relationships in ways that were not healthy. Where I went in with one intention, and then I had like exploded a room and didn't, and just didn't always have an honesty about where it came from because I didn't know. It had affected my mental health. And so I struggled as a teenager and I struggled as a young adult, with depression because it was just so much buried anger. And so learning that rage, it wasn't going to see the thing was like, I think we think, oh, we heal the rage. We look at the thing and then we heal it. And it's like, well, rage isn't a finished project when you're a black woman in America, because there's always something else to make you angry. So then how are we going to exist so I was like, well, what I know is that this country is always going to do something to produce rage. And what I also know is that if I can think about that as a continual source of power that is going to be generated, and I can say, as you do that, my ability to tap into my rage means that I'm human and that I have a sense of dignity because I know that what you're doing is unjust and inhumane. And now I'm going to use the rage that I feel to build the world I want to see, to teach kids in the way that they should be taught, to be a nurturing and tender professor, even as I demand rigor, right? Just as one example. To hold people accountable in the things that I write in the same way that I still fundamentally believe in people's ability to get better. Most people. Um, those were ways that I was able that I actively am engaged in a process of transforming my rage into a thing that won't destroy me, but like that when I look back, you know, at the world that Black women are trying to build, what I hope is that our rage builds monuments for Black freedom, and I think that that's possible. And I think the great thing about it is that all of us have endless wells of it if we would just tap into it. So.
Well, again, thank you, Professor Brittney Cooper for sharing yourself in this book, sharing your analysis. So again, when you get a book and you actually open it and not just listen to it, I don't know if this is in the hardcover book. I will open it when I get home. But in the new edition, paperback, I couldn't think of the word paperback. I was like softback, paperback. There's a discussion guide. So I think we should, recommend this book to friends. I think it is a book that, again, it is a letter that you have written to Black women, but is a book that everybody should read. And she has discussion questions, and it's actually something I asked last night with our webinar with the Color Girls, and I think it's something we're going to continue to say. So number 4 of the question is, who are the strong female leads you look up to in your life? And I'm going to say, who inspired you to be in this space, to write a book like Eloquent Rage, and then currently who is somebody that is inspiring and sewing into your life?
Yeah. My mama, my homegirls, Stacey Abrams. Oh my God. Like, I just love her. You know what I mean? But I also love all of these Black women political operatives. It's why I love Higher Heights. Like, I'm like, what are y'all doing? Because I basically just think that y'all are like in a back room somewhere, like engineering the revolution. And it makes me so happy. And so, like, I love Jessica Bird, right? And and Stephanie Brown James and all the sort of Black women, politicos who are like, we're going to do this thing differently, and this is actually going to change. Like, those are the people who are making me feel hopeful that we are not going to just be taken down by the foolishness that is American politics. So yeah, like, and look, creatively, Ava DuVernay, like, everything she does is a love letter to us. And I just love Queen Sugar. I feel like that show is my life in so many ways. I'm a Southern girl and I grew up in a similar context. But, I just think Black women are out here winning. And I'm like, go get everything. Be everywhere. Do all the look, Lizzo. And if I could have Megan Thee Stallion, like, I really wish that I could. Her knees are like, yeah. You know what I mean? And look, and I think that actually matters because everyone's fine when Black women are on their knees praying for the nation and basically trying to be Jesus. And so I like the way she has reformulated the power of Black women's knees to just be like, but I can twerk my ass off literally. Like, because in the end, like, Black joy and a little bit of like irreverence is, I think, the thing that keeps us sane. So.
Right. Yeah. And then why are you a Black woman who leads?
Wow. Why am I a Black woman who leads? Because I believe in the power of ideas to build a better future. Because I'm willing to take the risk of believing in people, even when it hurts and is inconvenient. And because my mama and my grandmama and my great grandmama encouraged me to be a woman who knows her own mind and to confidently stand in my own truth.
Well, thank you so much for joining Higher Heights, hashtag Black Women Lead political webinar series. I told you that this was we're trying something new. And so we appreciate all the authors taking the time. As you know, oftentimes you can't be in every city. I think, there are at least 10 cities that shouted out that for us, these are the webinars that allows you to sit in your comfort of your home. You might be eating, you might be cooking, you might be driving, you're in your pajamas, you're twisting your hair, that you're able to share a little bit of your brilliance to Black women and our supporters across the country in taking this hour. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank y'all for having me.
And so we've got 3 more webinars coming up, as we always do. And so we have 3 more. It's our October edition. So we're moving to Tuesday nights. We're jumping around. Some of y'all might have to go to Bible study, or it's the beginning of the school year. You have PTA and parent teachers. So we've been trying to move it around different parts of the week. So the next 3, Feminista Jones, Reclaiming Our Space, from Twitter to the streets. Tiffany Dufu, Drop the Ball. And then finally, Jamia Wilson, who is the publisher of Feminist Press. So she's going to talk about her latest book, which is a collection of short about Black leaders, but she's also going to talk about, so you've been watching and following this author webinar series, and you think you have a book, a blog, an article, or something you want to share with the world about how to become a published author. And so we hope you will do a couple of things. Share the webinar series with your network and invite them to join you next week, Tuesday, October 1st. These webinars, you'll get an email. We will actually be sending out videos, so share the videos with your network, and you will be able to see the complete series on our website at higherheightsforamerica.com/webinars. So again, thank you for becoming engaged with Higher Heights. If this is your first engagement, literally just RSVPing has made you part of this powerful growing network of Black women and our allies to, harness our power from the voting booth to elected office. And we hope that you will continue to support our webinar series, participate in our signature Sunday brunch conversations, and our upcoming Sister to Sister Salon conversations. And we need your help to continue to build this powerful network. So we look forward to you being an active and engaged member and helping Black women, helping #BlackWomenLead. So thank you and good night.